What? And then, there we go. Hi, Rose Nestler.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Carolina. Hi,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks so much for joining. It's Artfare's Thursday live virtual studio visit and interview. This week, we like, this series. We have Rose Nestler, which is very exciting. Has been watching your work grow since 2017. I mean, since you received your master's from Brooklyn College. And I think I first discovered you at spring break. Was that your first show, Rose?
No, that was definitely not my first show, but I think it was the first time that I had a very wide audience. I'll put it that way. Yeah, the spring break really gets a lot of people. So
it does.
Yeah.
Even though I have some thoughts on the format, I think that it definitely is a good launching pad for folks that put the energy, the time, the money, the commitment, and all the things that can go wrong in an empty space that's pretty much uninhabitable.
Yeah.
Who needs lights? Come on.
Yeah. We didn't have any in our booth. So.
Yeah. Or electricity.
Yeah.
I bet that goes really well for all your video work, eventually. But no, it was really exciting to see your work because it was different. It was fresh. It had definitely a completely different taste to it. You got your master's at Brooklyn College, but did you go to undergrad for something completely different? Did you get a BFA or did you?
No, so that's a good question. Yeah, I went to Mount Holyoke College and I got a BA in art history and studio art. And but it was a liberal arts school. So I think like when I graduated from undergrad, it was 2005. And I really thought I needed to figure out how to make a living in New York City. And I just went right into like the admin world or the admin side of the art world. And I've had every job under the art world sun. I've been an artist assistant, an art handler, a registrar, a teaching artist, you name it, pretty much I've done it all.
Wow.
And so I kind of, for about 10 years, I didn't go back to school and I always had a studio practice, but because I had to sustain myself financially, and I didn't have as big of an art community as I have now, it was hard to sort of like jump off, get a launching pad. And I was working, but I didn't really gain momentum until graduate school.
Yeah, I definitely can understand that. It took me 10 years to apply for a grad degree.
You feel better.
I mean, yeah, I graduated in 96 and then I didn't go back until 2005 to even, I guess it was mostly about the fact that I was really burnt out from school. So I thought, and also I was a single mom. Oh, that, but having to support yourself and be an artist and especially with a BA and being a registrar and going into higher ed administration and otherwise, is really lucrative. So it makes sense. And just kind of the final thought on that, when I entered 10 years later and was still watching folks leaving straight from their BFA into their master's, there's nothing wrong with that. It just felt for me, I needed that growth time to create work or to know myself better as to how my practice or the vision actually fits into the greater scheme of life.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I think that I think I'm a very early millennial. So I graduated high school in 01. So I think that I'm like on the cusp. I'm almost a Gen Xer. So I think that it speaks to my generation a bit too, that I took 10 years off between undergrad and grad. And I see a difference in a lot of my students now who are younger millennials and Gen Z. They don't waste much time. And I think it's just the precarity of not being able to find a job, just the kind of precarity of the situation that we're in right now. It's just different. And so I really like kind of lived it up in New York City for a decade and made a living and supported myself and
And
like
build your contacts, Rose.
totally.
That
Yes.
you
Yeah.
networked in order to basically meet the folks that are curating you, meet your fellow colleagues. Yeah, it is really important when you go straight from one to the other. And it's like the professional student kind of idea. It makes a lot of sense, yet this is a whole another can of worms I'm going to open. With the value of education now is so different from the value of education from when you went, or from the early 90s when I decided to go to college, or and others that may be listening, that we understand that it's not a golden key anymore for prosperity and to, well, for the prosperity of capitalism. Let's put it that way. So yeah, it definitely is a tricky slope to bear. I think the best advice I ever received was, if you're going to go to grad school, don't pay for it.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And when I applied, when I applied to grad school, I just applied to Hunter and Brooklyn College. And I got into Brooklyn College and, a state tuition.
Yeah.
I got the teaching fellowship. So I was paid to go to school my second year. Yeah. So
Nice.
I'm still in a lot of debt
Yeah.
from undergrad and beyond, but I'm glad that I'm not in like private school.
125,000 grand whole.
Yeah. Not there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's cost prohibitive now. Often coming from higher education for so many years, I also think it's, a lot of comments about the elitism and the lack of accessibility and exclusivity and all the good things. But you now are teaching at Parsons, so you kind of see firsthand the kids. You're teaching video there?
Yeah, I teach in the photo department, weirdly.
Oh, okay.
And I teach a video, it's Core Studio 3, and it's for juniors, and it's like a time-based studio class.
Well, that's great. It's interesting because as folks here, listening right now may best know you for your textile sculptures. And I mean, I see some things behind you even that I can't wait to get to. Yet, you've kind of been building these sculptures that have so much loaded meaning to them, and have this real proverbial kink to the gender nonconformity and the kind of like, well, gender fuck, I'll just say it, of the actual work, which I know your work is a lot about. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So what got you, I mean, you were teaching at Parsons in video, but it might be also interesting to kind of know that, have you taught a textile course before? Have you been, interested in sculpture or otherwise, or, how
I also teach sculpture at College of Staten Island usually.
Oh.
However, because of this, where we are right now, CUNY made a ton of cuts right before the semester started. So my class got cut, unfortunately. But I do teach sculpture normally. I've never taught a fiber-based or soft sculpture, which is, I feel mixed about that term. I've never taught that type of class. I would love to, because I feel like that's the one thing maybe I'm an expert at. So I have to wear a lot of hats when I'm teaching and kind of figure things out on the go. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
and now with all the, in order to be respectful to sensitivities and triggers, there's a lot of mental health conversations around the students today. Can only imagine what it's like to teach a studio class online, but hey, we could go down the rabbit hole again on that one. But the one thing I really want to get to is, can we see some of those soft sculptures, or you don't like that term, and I agree, but some of the earlier works?
Totally.
Great.
Yeah. I guess, should I start with sharing my screen?
Yeah, let's look at that.
And then I can do like a studio walk through
present
later.
day walk.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So bear with me. Okay. All right, there I am in my studio. And that's, I was telling Carolina, this is a photo that the person who runs the Artist Portraits Instagram took of me in February 2020. So right before the pandemic hit. And okay, so going way back to 2017, when I graduated from Brooklyn College, I had the piece on the right, on the left, excuse me. I had made this during grad school, and it wasn't for my thesis. It was kind of just a fun sculpture to just like, I was thinking about, starting to think about garments, but not fully. And I had this pair of pantyhose in my studio. And I was interested in the form of the control top, which is the top of a pair of pantyhose. Probably a lot of people know that. It's the part that can kind of, conceals, constricts, restricts, and like keeps you tucked in, or, anyway, yeah. And so I was like, well, what if I just cut off the legs and that was the form in itself, and it became this anthropomorphized figure. And so this one kind of, all of these others, I made about 5 total. They all kind of like sprung out of this one on the left. And they all have leather crotches. That's something I love about the control tops, like that little kind of ovular crotch space. It's just, I don't know, it's very weird. And also very kinky. And I was just like really into that, the kinky part of pantyhose. And so I was like, well, I need to make them out of leather then. Okay. Yeah. And so their titles are the Graces names from Greek and Roman mythology. And then I began working with video during grad school, and it was super exciting for me because I've always been a little disappointed in sculpture's ability to take its own life and like move. And I was never interested in making kinetic work. But video like was so satisfying to me. It just like made sculpture feel more alive to me. So I kind of started working in this way where the sculptures would inspire the video work. And so I would often make characters that were like recreations of the sculptures. So these costumes are worn by 3 dancers in the Video Strange business, which was part of a solo show that I had in 2018 at Ortega y Gasset Projects. The figures, that's out of place, I'm sorry. We'll get back to power suits in a second, but here's the installation shot of my show at Ortega y Gasset in 2018. And there you can see all of the control tops and the video monitors. And these characters were made out of the same fabric as the sculptures. And I rented out this office share space in New Jersey and shot this 2-channel, like 20-minute, really wild video where they run about this office space. And I actually have a little clip we can watch. Yeah. And go ahead and interrupt me at any point if you have questions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here's a very quick little clip of the video.
To lead a giant life, begin with giant thoughts. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. Greatness begins beyond your comfort zone.
The marketplace always rewards mastery.
So in that video, Strange Business, I'm working with found sound also, which is something that
was my question.
So all of the sound, it wasn't found sound because it was me speaking, just run through all of these different audio editing channels to warp my own voice. But what I was reading was found text, and that was taken from the walls of the office that we rented. And they were business motivational quotes. And so I was so like, this is creepy and really strange, but I also am obsessed. So I did a kind of deep dive of research of like corporate motivational text. And so all the talking in Strange Business that's where it's coming from. None of it's made up by me. And that sort of has been a common thread throughout all of my video work, that found text.
Oh, that's great to know. It also, I mean, I suppose getting back to that idea of the power suit, you said that slide was kind of out of place, but it's relevant in relationship to the conversations that you're having with yourself and with your audience about that gender, the genderization of clothing, or the twists and turns that something like the 80s power suit can take in relationship to some of your other work that I've seen focusing on the power suit. But then you have the control top, which is typically such a feminine thing to use, acting as these corporate buffoons inside the office space. So I like the direct play on these oxymoronic concepts.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think like being in the office space, I mean, thinking about the control top, I did associate, I was like, well, where do people wear control tops in an office setting generally? I mean, I remember my mom didn't work in an office, but I remember that look that she had often when she would get dressed up and like businessy. And in the early 90s, and it was always like there was that pantyhose were like underneath that skirt, and then the blazer with the intense shoulder pads, and it was just like such a look. So that actually is what took me to corporate culture. And so and then inside that corporate space is where I started to think about the power suit itself as really sometimes armor, sometimes like a skin or like a bag or something that we put over ourselves, and sometimes as this thing that we wear and then have to take off when we get home and like hang up. So that's kind of the forms that a lot of my when I create a power suit take. They're either they're usually hanging on a dowel or on the wall, but they're usually, I think, like if the breasts are conical and pointy, I feel like that's armor. If they're deflated and hanging and not stuffed or filled, that to me is like a removing of an outer shell or something. That's a more kind of like, I think, shameful or just intimate space that the power suit can take. So I feel like some of my power suits, those are sort of the two avenues that they take, if that makes sense.
But yeah, it's nice to think about the suppleness of the representational breasts is more intimate versus the defense mechanism, that which is the armor or the conical, which just constantly always reminds me of Madonna. But who else used to do? I mean, I think it was, of course it's been around, but I just always remember Madonna in a handful of videos in the 80s with the look.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's, I mean, breasts have been used in sculptures of fertility for forever, since the beginning of time, pretty much in every culture in the world. And they take many different forms in those sculptures. So I think I liked connecting to that, those historic roots, but then also making them become these almost like alien-like futuristic objects in themselves that have maybe like a job to do. So anyway, if that's, and I'll get to like what I mean. So this piece kind of runs with that, so that it's the conical breast of the armor, and then the nipples began in some of these power suits to have they were doing their own work in a way.
Is this this is post the pussy bow, right? That pussy bow that was really popular, like Melania wore it. It's I think in 2016. Nonetheless,
I don't know.
That's the first thing I thought of when I saw that bow. I mean, the bow is much bigger.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking if you like those, I think one of the power suits that I included in that slide includes, I guess, a pussy bow of that huge like feminine necktie. Yeah, and then and I mean, so the idea that like, you know, it has a double set of hands, and this one is really large, and it takes up a full like 8-foot wall, and the hands with these are weighted. It's like a beanbag in the hands. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I'm really interested in that weighted hand. It almost feels as if it's holding itself up on the wall, and then you have a metal dowel opposed to the other wooden dowels you had prior, and it serve to have a little bit more of a rough and tumbler edge, yet with the the pink and the black together, it makes it softer with that bow. And it also feels, the hands feel offensive or defensive, either way, jutting out. And I like these ideas with the fabric you're using. I mean, you're coming straight from your own kind of, like, you're buying this from the bolt, or are you recycling? As I noticed some pinstripes in the last ones, and I'm just wondering,
I'm buying straight from the bolt. And with these, when the first power suits I was making were all made out of like shirting and suiting textile and fabric. I started to kind of play with that later on. But yeah, so pinstripes, and I think in the next one, like this is a business shirt material. So I'm very big about connecting like material, content, and form into this kind of triad of magic, and sometimes it works and sometimes it fails, but that's a question I ask myself with most of my work. Like, does the material that I'm using, does the fabric or leather, the type of leather that I'm using, does that match what it is that I want the piece to say? And then the form that it's taking, does that also work with those two?
And the way that the hands are positioned here, the latter one, now this one, almost in a surrender position of sorts, the consideration of the body language within the suits, I find compelling as well. Can you talk to that at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think like this one is really about taking up space, like spread out, and also take, and like, just the spread out and like get back. Don't touch me. And then this one, it's so interesting. People read it as the surrender, which I get. So this one, maybe I was actually thinking of more like the male business executive who's like does this thing and kind of like leans back in his business chair or something. but it didn't end up reading that way. So it ended up reading as more of this like almost like pinned to the wall, hanging, almost like a crucifix feeling in a way. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question about, but I mean, I definitely like think about like, you know, here's another one that's more crucifix. And then I think I'm thinking about like whether they're stuffed in places and then the arms aren't stuffed, you know, like where there is polyfill, where there's foam, where there's batting, and where I just leave the fabric to do its thing. Yeah. So this is a video that went with my show, my 2-person show at Spring Break in 2019 with Coria Scotto, called Tying the Knot. And essentially like these costumes were like inspired by this piece. Like I didn't get the exact same fabric, but I wanted it to be really close. And then here's the video, and I'll just play like a really short clip because this is a 7-minute video.
Yeah.
The bow tie is a descendant of the knotted cravat. Bow tie is a descendant of the knotted cravat. Bow tie is a descendant of the knotted cravat.
It was born from the need for neckwear that was easier to wear than the cravat. Active, and that would last throughout a more active day. The butterfly and batwing bow ties were worn with dinner jackets, and white bow ties with evening tails.
Yeah, so that's also found sound. And it's from like Brooks Brothers and like Maxim websites and it's straight from necktie and bow tie tutorials. So later on in the video, I do a bow tie tutorial, how to tie a bow tie, and then a necktie tutorial. And the sound, the music that comes on is kind of like, sort of like 1950s carnival ride, like you feel a little nauseous. And it like I edited it so it sort of like you've fallen off the ride and it starts to derail while they're talking about neckties, and then you pass this place through the right side, and then, you know, and it's just like there's no way you're going to be able to follow this video, but
well, it does. You know, the reverb is quite a bit when it's speaking over itself in a feedback loop, kind of, you know. I suppose it does get a little bit intense. I really want to shout out to Jen Hitchings. Thanks for showing that pussy bow. I just saw the chat.
Oh, amazing. Hi, Jen. Yeah, I've seen some familiar names. So hi. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so I'll go a little faster, but just like, you know, I started using leather in early 2018. And here, these are pretty small pieces. This was another all leather piece that was in the Spring Break show in 2019. And this was a piece I made in late 2018 that really like came out of actually like not having anything coming up. Like I didn't have any shows coming up. And it was actually, no, it's kind of early 2018. It was like right after my show at Ortega Gasset Projects, and it was my first solo show. And I sort of was like, okay, I'm ready. And like nothing happened and no one contacted me for like six months or something. And I was like, okay. What am I gonna do?
You know, Rose, it's such a testament to being a practicing artist. You know, you just got to keep making. Is one thing that my partner and I tell to so many artists that we work with, both young and mid-career, and we really understand that, you know, in order to make things happen, in order to actually get that next best thing, you must be ready. You're always ready. You always be ready for a studio visit. Always be ready for a conversation about your work. And
Totally.
And by that, is what it means to practice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember my professor in grad school, Patricia Cronin. I don't know if you know her work, but she was very stern and intense. But she would say, she said, like that curator, you know, that person from the museum, they're only going to come to your studio once, so you better be ready. So, you know, I don't know if that's true. It probably is, or, you know, but anyway, this piece came out of that moment. And I just was kind of, I think it was a sort of like pivot point for me, because I wasn't stuffing the fabric anymore. I was letting the neoprene and like insulation foam inside as an armature kind of do its thing so it could stand up. And it wasn't as like, I've tended to like stop using polyfill and start using more like rigid materials inside as armature. So this piece was exciting for me because I really like tested the limits and kind of figured out if making something like this was possible. And then of course, here's the nipples are inspired by the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, read my mind again. Well, and I mean, really what I was going to ask or just kind of comment on it is your humor and your sense of humor in this. Even when you're talking about the leather works, there's the fetishization that's also kind of incorporated into BDSM and, you know, kind of moments with the leather. And then also with this object, this sculpture, it's clear humor in here. And I'm curious about that. The work itself is very attractive to a lot of audiences because of that humor.
Yeah. Well, I think humor is like a universal language. And it's something that most people can relate to. And I think it's something that we need to get through the hard parts. And I love comedy. I love dark humor. So it's funny though, it's interesting because some of my new work that I've been making for this show that's about to open, I feel like they're pretty dark. I don't know if they're funny at all. So we'll see if
we get to see those. We get to see those in a couple minutes, huh?
Yes.
That's the show in Montreal?
Yes. Yeah.
Wait, did that get, we'll talk about it later, but that show was always meant to be a coming, or was that supposed to be a spring show or a summer show?
It was always meant to be during the fall. It didn't get pushed back because Canada has their shit together more than we do.
Yeah.
Just a little. Okay. I really got into neoprene. I love it as a material to work with, and specifically neoprene mesh, because it brought in the feeling of like athleisure and sports. And so I kind of just like kept building these garments and moved away a little bit from the like business suiting materials in my work. And so here's two more pieces from 2019, also using the neoprene mesh. And then this, going back a little bit, like I had a solo show at Brick in their project room in 2018, 19, kind of on the cusp. And it was titled Gymnasia. And it was an exploration into like the history of athletic culture, and the Western history of athletic culture, I should say. And I don't know, you know, I feel like not as many people know me or know this body of work, but it's definitely something that I'm still interested in exploring. And I was like a jock in high school, weirdly. So
what was your sport, or were you one of the sports?
I was a rower.
Oh.
And it was really intense. And you know, I like did 6 to 8 a.m. morning practice, or 5 to 7, excuse me, and then I would go after school and do like 4 to 6. And I was like a Northwest regional singles champion.
Hey.
Yeah. So I was really into sports, and I think what brought me back to it was actually that through line in my work of talking about gender. And I think when I was a competitive athlete, I noticed something in myself, and that was when I was like competing to my limits. I felt that it was like one access point where I could transcend my gender and transcend my experience as an other in society, and I could like reach just this kind of a human feeling that I in other spaces hadn't had before. Of I always would still, like wherever I was, I always kind of was like, well, I could notice, I was thinking about my gender, and I felt like sports, when your body is in like full exertion, you're not, it's like a point where you don't think about gender. In obviously then you do, but it's like a personal thing that like if you're exerting yourself to your limits, it's like it kind of is shed for a moment.
It just reminds me of a story real quick one, I promise. But since you speak to gender, and when you're like pushing it to your limits and your endurance is just, you're building, and you're in the orange zone, red zone, wherever it is. I was talking to a trans man recently, and he was talking about, just kind of getting off tea for a minute, and they were talking about how different it was. Like he could only do like 2 pull-ups now, whereas when he had gotten on T, he was like, I could do like 20 pull-ups. This is insane. This is amazing. And so like, even though I think for folks that are cis or, non-trans folks, like that is a real thing. Like gender doesn't really matter that much, but when you are able to kind of experience that hormonal boost that normally someone would get that is male, I don't know, just kind of like brought all these thoughts to my head, realizing, there are very much differences between our physiques in relationship to our endocrine systems, especially for performance.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I liked that access to like feeling like a man. I don't know. So anyway, so it was something that I wanted to explore. I'm also really interested in athleisure wear, and kind of the ways it's multi-million-dollar industry that's marketed specifically towards women. So all these are 2 8-foot sculptures that are modeled after Greek amphora, which were the trophies for athletes in the ancient gymnasiums. And they're made out of spandex and neoprene and mesh. And then there was a 3-channel video, and I worked with the same dancers as before, as well as 2 wrestlers. And then the sound was a Greek chorus, like a mini Greek chorus of 6 performers. And here they are wearing and I almost also saw them as like sports commentators, which is a whole nother thing that I'm kind of obsessed with. And then the sound was sports commentary, like quotes from Plato and Socrates about the ancient gyms, mixed with a lot of language about Serena Williams, in the numerous times that she was having issues with the media and press, and kind of, and it was all sort of like, and then it quotes by various famous athletes, and that was merged together into a script that was sung by these performers. So, and it's hard, I don't have a video compressed of this because it's just, here's a few stills from one of the channels. It's like a 20-minute piece, so it's 3 different moments, so it's hard to kind of experience over Zoom, but there are links to the videos on my website. Yeah.
And so so this gymnasia brick and further working with neoprene and things, you kind of like transmuted into different types of genres, I suppose, of masculinity or just like gender differences. and even with your fabric. So I'm dying to know, like, are you using the same machine all the time, or like, what is your machine? Because to go from leather to neoprene, I mean, is it for Nina? Like, what are you using?
My machine is a beast, and it's time for a new timing belt. I've already like worn out the timing belt once. I just have, and I'll do it maybe after this. I'll do a walkthrough because I'm ready of my studio. But I just have a Singer heavy duty,
Okay.
and you just change your needles, change your thread and tension. But I treat my poor sewing machine like it's a table saw.
Right.
And it's not easy. So
Does
I'm
she have
about
a name?
what?
Does it have a name?
No, it should. I don't often name machinery. I know I really love when people do, but I don't. I'm like,
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we
yeah.
in our cars. I got all sorts of names for all sorts of things, and I automatically called the machine a she. Of course I did. Jeez. Anyway, so these are the sports bras of sorts.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of an example of like a merging between athleisure and like the power suit in a way, because I sort of view sports bras as a power suit in themselves as well. Yeah.
Leisure, I appreciate the fact you say that. And when you present these on the wall, the form, well, first of all, are they wearable?
No, these are huge. So they're
Oh.
like 3 or 4 times human scale.
Okay. And so when they're on the wall, they clearly have a kind of a front and a back to them. And they're lying, from what I can tell from this flat image, they're lying fairly flat.
Yeah, these are they actually are suspended by magnets, so they just like slap on the wall. There's magnets screwed into the wall, and yeah, I have, that's sometimes I struggle with like, how do I show a garment? And with sometimes it's the dowel that works.
Classic.
You'll see in someone like newer pieces, I have hardware that's very specific to the piece. So I'm trying to think a lot more actually about how the work hangs if it's bound to the wall.
Absolutely. And not so
Yeah.
much how it hangs, but how the absence of form is felt. Because as textiles are tactile and folks want to touch them and feel them, folks want to wear them, they also, their initial function is to be a garment to don as a costume, or, to cover our parts. So yeah, that's a really interesting departure for when you potentially begin to put them on models or not have them on models, or meaning like giant sculptures underneath the garments or the sculpture itself. It's definitely something to play with, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I would really love to see not only the work you're doing for Montreal, but also your studio, because a lot of times don't get to be in an artist studio, since a lot of artists had to let their studios go, or they hadn't been able to get there and they don't have Wi-Fi, but you're there.
I'm here. I was not here for a while during the pandemic, but I'm back in because it's a shared space. So but I'm here now. I'm really glad to be here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to go to my phone to do the walkthrough.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just bear with me a moment. I think I'm going to join the meeting again somehow. got logged out.
Yeah, Rose, I don't see two Rose Nestlers. There you are. Fantastic.
Hi. Wait, can everyone, let's see.
Perfect. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. There's a little delay. So hopefully that will go away on my end. I can hear myself talking a little bit, but well. Okay, so I'll walk you around my studio and I'm gonna I'll walk to the front and I'll turn my camera around. All right, so here's my studio. You know, messy shelves there. Okay, so
Look at
here
all those
is
totes.
Oh yeah, my purses. So here's a new piece that I'm working on for this show in Montreal that opens November 7th. And that's going to be at the space Projet Pangy. And you can kind of peep under the collar. And this piece is really pretty different for me because it's the first time I've used upholstery in a while. So it's hard foam upholstered with a neoprene velvet that's actually two-sided. So the nipple there is the other side of the pink velvet, which is like this neon orange.
You
so even
found like neoprene velvet, or did you
Yes.
combine them yourself? Holy
No,
moly.
I found it. Yeah, so this and then that's these black leather, very like macabre roses here. So this piece is it's also really different for me because it's modeled after Woman with a Book by Fernand Léger. So, and I think, you know, I think we can talk about it. I'm not, you know, I'm still sort of thinking it over, but I made this work to respond to the two other artists in the show who are painters, and they really are coming from a place of, I'll keep moving, modernism in their painting styles. I don't know if you know the painters, Danielle Orchard is one of the other painters in the show, and Gahi Park.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah. So
he's great.
yeah. So and this is another piece for the show. It's like, gosh, the lighting in my studio is really horrible, but it's neon orange leather. Wow. So I don't know. It's really hard to read on cameras, but in real life, it is like electric. And then it's these hand-carved soapstones, and it is modeled after like a Renaissance era chastity belt. So it has like this black leather like fringe on the bottom. And then, you know, talking about like hardware, you know, it's hung by these little like hooks here that feel very much of the BDSM world, and kind of thinking about like pleasure and pain. And then another leather piece that is modeled after a Shaker style Bertha, which is a cape worn by Shaker women as kind of this like a modesty cape that you would wear over your dress. And then also the same neon orange leather, which, gosh, it's like reading in this really weird tangerine way, but it's the same bright neon. And then these hand-carved nails, and it's solid cherry nails that the breasts or the nipples kind of are holding, and a solid cherry hanger that it's hanging on.
Stunning.
Yeah. And then here's some like older work. This is, you know, directly talking about armor. This is a piece from 2019 called Joan's Cuirass. And I was thinking about like, you know, if Joan of Arc was a dominatrix, like what would, like a large scale, massive dominatrix, like what would her armor look like? And this is leather here. And then also this like sparkly neoprene. And then this was like a piece that was next to it. And it was like, I was the more thinking about Joan of Arc's like dom stable. So these like black kind of patent gloves holding saddlebags and this like soft sword here. And then I have a few more, let's see. This is just like an older piece from 2019 of like a princess sleeve, also using neoprene mesh that I was obsessed with. And then my last piece that I'm working on for this show in Montreal is this giant tool bag made out of like this green snakeskin leather. And then using the same carved wooden nails. And it's going to have soft tools in the bag. And it's going to stand on, it's going to be like a sculpture in the round, which I'm not usually making. It's going to stand on this stool here. So that's like part of it. So I
forget that stool is so well crafted. Are you
that I had fabricated. No.
Yeah.
So I here, I'll come back. I'll turn my screen around. Okay. So that one I had fabricated. So I designed and then this I'm gonna come out of here and come back to my normal camera. So hold on, just
sounds good. The right.
Yeah, I don't have access to a wood shop.
Okay.
And also I don't have those skills.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's definitely, I like to make everything myself. But sometimes it's just not practical. Like I'd rather spend the time doing what I can do best, which is sew and pattern and construct, and then hire someone who's really good at making to make these like wooden, here.
Yeah, they're really they're really beautiful objects of themselves. So the master behind the design is, I mean, it's still kudos to you, right? Which is the fabrication part. I mean, the pointiness of the stool's legs and the fact that it's still balanced, it's menacing almost.
Yeah.
Deadly. I mean, it feels deadly. I wouldn't want to be in a bar fight with one of those stools. The leather that you're using, though, I'm curious, it's cow, or do you ever switch up to vinyl, or are you?
I do use vinyl for some work. Obviously, like vinyl is cheaper. It's easier to sew. But the unfortunate thing about vinyl is it like doesn't come in as many colors, and sometimes it just doesn't have the same like texture or feeling that leather does. So the green snakeskin leather is cowhide, and then it's kind of faux snakeskin, so it's not actual.
It's stamped somehow.
Yeah, stamped, and then like this patent leather, like adding of plastic on top. So yeah, it's definitely not vegan. So I'm sorry to vegans out there. But for right now, I'm compelled to use it for certain works.
Yeah, I mean, it's your material. I think it goes along with, some of the ideas that you're putting forth. And a lot of times the leather industry is a direct relationship to the meat industry. So it's kind of, what are you going to do with it anyway? There's no justification for killing
Yeah.
Yet, you know, I know a lot of it is runoff. There's a question in the chat that, please, folks, feel free to continue asking me. 5 more minutes, Rose. It's gone by so quickly. Things do. Sarah Deneen is interested in knowing, do you still participate in any organized sports or athletic practice of some sort?
No. Because I just am like, I guess I'm an artist if that's the sport now.
Yeah, good answer. But like, I mean, I suppose as a follow-up to that, you're still staying fit. You maybe the walks or
Yeah,
swim.
I do what I can. I love exercising. Like, so when I try and fit it into my schedule as much as I can. Recently, I have not, because I've just been so busy with teaching and getting work ready for this show. But I love like going, I mean, when we could go to classes, like my favorite thing to do is like go to a boxing class, or, you know, like I love working out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the time that you spent away from your studio, Rose, what were you kind of like, were you doing any creative problem solving? Were you working on different materials, that which you had access to, or like what were you kind of doing when you weren't able to get to your spot?
Well, that's a good question. I made actually like that video with the blue hands and
Yeah,
the slime. I I'll share my
let's
screen like
play just a little part of that real quick.
really quickly. If you hold
Yeah.
on second. Here we go. Okay.
The weird.
Can everyone hear?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I made, you can kind of, I don't know. Yeah, so I made this video in quarantine in my living room, and I just like built a foam core set and covered it with clear vinyl and made my own slime and my own body paint. So that's what I was doing. One of the things. I also made this like a fanny pack and another like little stone carving for a show at Fisher Parish Gallery. Yeah, so I was doing small scale stuff, and yeah, it's kept busy enough.
Small scale stuff that ends up having a big impact, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this video was really exciting. I'm kind of wanting to make another video and challenge myself to use the same parameters, like that I don't hire performers. I just am by myself. I shoot it by myself. I don't need to like rent a video camera. I just do it on my DSLR. I build a set, like kind of, and just see where it takes me, like that my hands maybe are the characters again. So we'll see. That's kind of what I want to do next once I finish work for this show in Montreal.
Yeah, and it looks like you have like 4 or 5 pretty elaborate works going to Montreal.
Yeah, they have a big space.
Okay.
Yeah. So each of us have 5 pieces going in.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. And when's your deadline to get it in the mail?
They're picking up on November 3rd, so I have a little bit more time to finish that giant tool bag.
Ooh.
So wish me luck.
Close. Election day, and you're just gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, so but
I'm out.
Yeah, I want to finish this week to get it done, and I'm actually signed up to be like an election defender on election day. So yeah, so I just want to be ready to go. So
definitely.
Yeah.
I think we all do on November 3rd, but it's really been a pleasure to speak with you, Rose Nestler. It's great to hear more about your work and kind of have this virtual space to do that interview, talk, studio visit. We had it all. I really value your work, and I hope that things just keep getting bigger and bigger and you just blow up all over the place. And then this YouTube video, and for anyone that missed any part of the interview, will be up, but that'll just be like, oh, I did that so long ago. Oh my gosh, it was just in this part of my career, but yeah, I really do appreciate you. I don't know if you have any closing remarks or anything you want to say.
No, just thank you so much for asking me to do this, and thank you to Artfare, and thank you everyone for joining. It's nice to see some familiar names and also new people that I don't know. So thank you for spending an hour with me in my studio.
Yeah, definitely our pleasure. And we can see a lot of your work on Artfare still, and just, it's there, your own inventory. No one else has consigned it. Let's scoop it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see more coming from you in the future too. Thanks again, Rose. We'll hopefully see you soon.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.